according to new research, cat hair could be a key tool when it comes to solving crimes.
Yes, that's right. While a criminal may take precautions not to leave their own DNA behind, transferred cat hair could provide police with a link between a suspect and a crime scene or even a victim.
We're joined now by criminologist David Wilson to explain how it all works and how many things work.
Yes.
A cat hair of all things, David.
Yes, Rosh, Craig, lovely to see you again.
And
well, of
you.
course, you were very careful about that link. It might, you said the cat hair might link a suspect to a crime scene. And that's the key thing to grasp here. DNA is really the cherry on top of a cake. You've got to have the cake first, which the police have already got a suspect. They think it might be one of these 5, 10, 15 people, and therefore they're looking for other ways to link that particular suspect to the crime scene. And cat hair, according to research by Leicester University, might be one new tool in their toolbox.
OK. Let's take it back to basics. What actually is DNA?
OK, and neither of you studied biology, and so let's keep the biology really tight. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, and it's the substance of existence, not just human existence, but DNA will be present in every living organism. Plants, fish, birds, mammals, and of course, we're a mammal, humans. And the key thing about DNA is it has our genetic code, and that genetic code is going to be unique to us unless we're a monozygotic twin. In other words, unless we're an identical twin, when our DNA genetic code will be copied by our twin. But that's what makes it so interesting to the criminal justice system, because it identifies a specific individual.
It is the greatest fingerprint out there, basically, right?
And so, of course, we in this country were the first to trial DNA profiling, DNA fingerprinting in 1988, the work of Alex Jeffreys at Leicester University. And of course, we were the first country in the world in 1995 to set up a national DNA database. And to this day, even though there are countries with more DNA profiles on their DNA database, per capita, we have 6 million DNA profiles on that database, and therefore, per capita, we have not only the oldest, but the largest DNA database in the world.
And when it comes to solving crimes, you said before that you need... It's the cherry on top, right? You need the cake, and, you know, and it kind of doesn't help otherwise. How helpful is that last cherry?
This is a really good question, Rosh, because despite what we see on CSI or Silent Witness, DNA leads to an outcome in a criminal case, are you ready, in 0.3% of the cases.
Wow.
It is, you know, it's largely irrelevant in terms of being a crime-fighting tool in itself, but what it will do is it will help the police narrow down a list of suspects, and it might therefore identify a suspect. I mean, for example, in rape, the DNA is usually not in question because clearly there is DNA on the victim, but the perpetrator or the alleged perpetrator will say, well, of course my DNA is on the victim. We had consensual sex.
Yeah.
So DNA is a really... a cherry on top of the cake, largely irrelevant in itself as a crime-fighting tool.
And I suppose it comes even more complex when we're linking it to cat hair.
Well, again, it's just about narrowing down potential suspects.
OK.
Because it's everywhere, right? Our DNA is in everything we touch, drink. We drink that tea, there's DNA left there. It's all over the place.
So we shook hands, and you and I gave each other a cuddle. My DNA's on you, your DNA's on me, and vice versa. So, in other words, that's called touch DNA, sometimes known as trace DNA. And the particular examples that I thought through to talk about would be where, for example, the Forensic Science Service in this country, which used to be a government agency, was disbanded in 2012, developed something called low copy number DNA, which is based on trace or touch DNA in relation to the Peter Falconio Joanne Lease case that takes us back to 2001.
Just before people start wondering, before we go into that, cat DNA, where does that come into things? Because we've been talking about that a lot this morning.
So the cat DNA, the researchers at Leicester have been able to identify a specific cat from DNA hairs, that cat hairs might be left at a crime scene, that might be connected to a suspect, and therefore, if the suspect, if they're trying to narrow down their group of 5 to 1, and only one of them or 2 two of them have a cat,
Right, then okay, yes.
They will link
Cuddle
that
your
back.
cat, commit a crime, find cat hair crime scene, link it up.
Does
There we
that
go.
cat hair relate
It's sort
to
of
that?
closing the gap a bit,
There you
isn't
go.
it?
Yeah. There you go. Right, these case studies, because they are fascinating. Walk us through them.
So the first I thought was, because of low copy number and because of the incredible work by the Forensic Science Service, I thought we would use Peter Falconio, Joanne Leese case. Boyfriend, girlfriend, on an extended holiday in Australia, driving their Kombi van. They go to one of those many truckside restaurants that you find in the outback in the Northern Territories. They leave the restaurant, then soon afterwards, Peter Falconio sees a car behind him, flagging him down. The driver of that car says, "Oh, there's sparks coming out of your car. There's something wrong with your car." Peter Falconio goes behind the car, and then Joanne Leese hears a gunshot. Peter Falconio's body has never been found. Then a man appears at the window of the car and starts to tie up Joanne Leese, and she manages to escape. Now, that case would never have been solved but for a low copy number DNA, because there was touch DNA when the Forensic Science Service looked at the ties, the perpetrator, a man called Bradley Murdoch. When the police looked at the Forensic Science Service looked at the ties that had been used to bind Joanne Leese, they found tiny, tiny trace amounts of DNA, and because of that low copy number technique, were able to link that back to Bradley Murdoch, who Joanne Leese was also able to identify as having been in the truckside restaurant.
So that's where it really does pay off. And we've also, in our last minute and a half, we've got the case of Colin Pitchfork too.
Colin Pitchfork starts the whole process going because, again, we've mentioned Leicester University once or twice, Alex Jeffreys, now Sir Alex Jeffreys. Colin Pitchfork is a convicted double murderer of Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth, 1983-1986, and he initially escapes arrest, and somebody else identified, someone came forward and said they had committed one of the murders. And what Alex Jeffreys was able to show, that the DNA was of a particular man, not the particular man that came forward to say he had committed it. And Colin Pitchfork is eventually captured because he got a work colleague called Ian Kelly to take the DNA test for him. Ian Kelly then goes to the pub, brags about the fact that he'd been given 200 quid by Colin Pitchfork to take the DNA test, and that gets back to the police. It all unravels. Colin Pitchfork, the first man in the world to be convicted by DNA profiling, DNA fingerprinting.
Convicts people, also exonerates people as well, right? So that's the other side.
And we've seen the case of Andrew Malkinson very recently. There was absolutely no DNA in relation to Andrew Malkinson. And in fact, DNA existed we were aware of DNA existing of the perpetrator as far back as 2007, but poor Andrew Malkinson isn't actually exonerated until 2022.
Wow.
Fascinating.
There we go. The power of DNA.
Good dinner party guest, this fella.
Yes.
Tell us stories.
I always want to pick
There
his
you go.
brains.
Yeah.
Always.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.